Certainly.
This is WeatherScope.
Well, thanks so much for joining us here at the Weather Channel. We continue to follow our mid-Atlantic storm. Some heavy snow from West Virginia across northern Virginia through Maryland to southeastern Pennsylvania. With the latest on our mid-Atlantic storm and where it's heading, we'll head back to the studio with Declan Cannon.
That's right, Rich, and also joining me alongside, we have senior meteorologist Colin Marquis. Colin will give us perhaps some insight in the short term when we look at a Doppler radar coming up in a few minutes. But first, we want to talk so much about this storm so far, what's been happening, how much snow has occurred, and let's go ahead and show you the storm history. And, well, there's your Doppler. Anyway, Colin, tell you what, why don't you just jump right on in here and talk a little bit about some short-term forecasting here in terms of what we're seeing on Doppler and what we can expect for the next couple of hours.
Okay, first of all, although it's not on the screen that you can see right now, the snowfall is tending to break up and taper off in western Virginia. So as far as the D.C. metro areas and in Baltimore as well, the snow will be tapering off after about 2 more hours, so around 7 o'clock or so. And time after that, I'm expecting the intensity to come down a bit, the clip will drop off, and the accumulating snow, especially on the grassy surfaces, will end. As far as Philly, they are looking like they're in the sweet spot right now as far as the Doppler that I'm looking at right now. As you can see on your screen, the darker greens right across from Baltimore up through Philadelphia. It is tending to slide ever so slightly to the south with time, Declan. So the southern suburbs of Baltimore, southern suburbs of Philadelphia on down toward Wilmington, and even on toward Atlantic City, looks like we'll be doing rather well as far as snowfall accumulations over the next couple of hours.
Okay, well, joining us now is our own Mike Seidel. He's in Washington, D.C. He's been there since the snow started. And Mike, why don't you go ahead and give us an update as to what's happening around the D.C. area? Okay, I believe we've lost audio with Mike. So again, Colin, apparently the snow tapering off, as you said, west of where Mike is located, and hopefully we'll be joining him in a few seconds here. But the snow tapering off, we talked earlier, in fact yesterday we were talking about the upper level system coming out across the Appalachians, and we've had some pretty decent snow totals up at the ski resort levels, and now that upper part of the system is starting to slide towards the coast.
Yeah, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the broadcast, in one of the earlier broadcasts, the storm initially was pretty disjointed in that the upper system was coming across Indiana and southern Ohio and across northern parts of West Virginia, and that's why they got some pretty substantial snow, as much as 4 to 6 inches or 7 inches in some of the mountains of northern West Virginia, and also as much as 8 inches in northwestern parts of Virginia. That was pretty much with the upper system. And things are starting to come together with the surface low and the upper level system coming across, and everything is starting to kind of congeal east of the Virginia Capes, and it will tend to pull offshore. It looks like things won't get going totally as far as rapidly intensifying cyclone until the storm is off the middle Atlantic coast. Now it could, however, brush parts of extreme southeastern New England, Cape Cod and the islands later on tonight and the early part of tomorrow with some heavy snow at that point, and we may be looking at several inches of snow there at that time. But as far as the upper level system, it is swinging across northern Virginia now, and as it exits northern Virginia, that's when the heaviest snow in the metro area of D.C. will tend to shut off.
Okay, and I believe we have Mike Seidel on the line now, and let's go ahead and check in with Mike and give us an update as to what's been happening around the D.C. area the last couple of hours. Mike?
Okay, Declan, we had some moderate snow for a couple of hours. In fact, we picked up a quick inch to inch and a half here at the Capitol. We're on the west side of the Capitol, the back side of the Capitol, on the corner of 3rd and Pennsylvania. Going to get Randy Frostiger, photographer, to kind of pan across the area. Beautiful, beautiful late afternoon setting up here in February. Heavy wet snowfall, good for snowball making. And you can see traffic is moving fine. The roadways have been salted 4 or 5 times now. And with temperatures at 34, Declan, no chance of any freezing. We're panning across the mall, and you can see how that wet snow is stuck to the trees here in the district. And we come back, and there's a group of people down there trying to make a snowman in the distance. Not sticking really even to the sidewalks because temperatures have been warm over the past 4 or 5 days, running in the 40s and 50s. Now let's take a look down here at the ground here and check out the snowfall accumulation. Just to give you an idea how much we've had here in the city. Now remember, outside the Beltway we've had a lot more. up to 5 to 6 inches. But as we come down here and take a look, you can see a good 2 to 3 inches here. Now remember, this is a heavy wet snow, so it has compacted, and as a result, you really have to measure it almost every hour, because with a heavy wet, high water content, it tends to settle. So a couple of inches, 2 to 3 inches here in Washington, Declan. Roadways right now inside the Beltway are in pretty good shape with temperatures just above freezing, but they are down below freezing, the temperature that is, at Dulles Airport. And as you get out towards Reston, out into far reaches of Fairfax County, out 270 towards Gaithersburg, Montgomery County, those areas outside the Beltway, you're accustomed to more snowfall and cooler temperatures. Already problems there on the bridges and overpasses. And when the temperature tonight falls below freezing inside the Beltway and in the city, we'll probably have some icy patches, especially on elevated surfaces. We're looking for a low tonight between 27 and 30 degrees, leaning towards the 27 out in the suburbs and about 30 here in town. But the road crews, the Department of Public Works here in Washington, have put down a ton of salt. They've been waiting for this one since there hasn't been much snow this season, and the roads are in good shape. And with all the salt down here, I would suspect that there will not be any serious problems until later on tonight in the district. Declan, back to you in Atlanta.
Okay, thanks a lot. Again, that's Mike Seidel reporting. We'll check in with Mike again in about another 25 minutes from Washington, D.C. Well, it's been an interesting system. Not a major storm per se, Colin, but again, interesting in that we haven't had some decent snow across this part of the country in quite some time. So
That's right. Although you've probably seen the graphics many times up to this point before the storm in D.C., they'd only had 2.5 inches of snow, and so they've doubled that at least at National Airport. One last thing to mention is that you may have seen on the shots from Mike, the ground is warm, and although they're getting 2 to 4 inches from D.C. up through Baltimore, perhaps a little more, that's on the grassy surfaces. On the roads, most of them are just wet.
that's right. Okay, well, stay tuned. We're going to keep you posted on the coverage of the snow as it expands a little farther north into southern New England tonight. Right now, let's turn it back to the studio and Rich Johnson.
Right on. Well, we see in the southwest, upper level storm here. It's important because it's going to eventually develop in more of a system once we have some Gulf of Mexico moisture to work with. For now, though, our mid-Atlantic storm scooting on out and curving up past Cape Cod, heading toward Nova Scotia. Here's our current weather map across the country. A little bit of rain in south central Texas, snow flurries through the Midwest. No big deal for traveling. The problems have been from West Virginia over to northern Virginia, as Declan and Colin were mentioning, right through central Maryland and southeastern Pennsylvania, the Amish country. National radar, a little bit of light snow possible in northern Illinois, some of this not reaching the ground. It was lake enhanced earlier, or lake effect. Some of that wind coming down off of Lake Michigan bringing Chicago just a bit of snow. Most of it over with, although there could be a little bit in your vicinity. Let's check your forecast and see what happens. We'll talk more about this up in the
Only on the Weather Channel.
We have been very fortunate, and it's been a pretty decent driving day in and around the District of Columbia. Randy's now panning up towards the mall, up 3rd Street. You can see how this heavy wet snow has stuck to the trees. Notice there's a lot of people walking around, a lot of people visiting the National Gallery of Art across the street, the Capitol behind me, playing around here on the mall, making snowmen, walking their dogs. You can see a couple of joggers. A lot of people out here just enjoying the snowfall, kind of like the first snowfall of the season, because we've more than doubled what they had seen so far. 2.5 inches officially at National Airport, and we have picked up about 3 here on the mall on the west side of the Capitol on Pennsylvania Avenue. More out in the suburbs, 4 or 5 inches out in the suburbs beyond the Beltway, And Declan, that's where the problems continue this evening, especially on the elevated surfaces, the bridges, and the overpasses, because temperatures there are below freezing, running just below freezing at 31 degrees. Here in the district, we're running at 34, and so far no icing at this point. But later on tonight, temperatures even in town will drop below freezing, but these roads have been so heavily salted, I would doubt we'd have a lot of problems on the roadways tomorrow morning if you're getting up early.
Again, Mike, a very good point. Temperatures today getting into the mid-30s around where you're at, and tonight as we head into the nighttime, it really wouldn't take much of a drop, perhaps a degree or two in some locations, and we could be getting into the potential for some icy roadways.
Well, there's a lot of moisture on the roadways, Declan, but remember the secondary roads and the neighborhood streets have not been salted. These primary roads have been hit pretty heavily, so even if it does drop down to 27 or 28, most of these roadways will stay wet as salt does work down below the temperature of freezing. But again, even in town, the elevated surfaces like 395 and some of those areas will have problems tomorrow morning until we can get the temperature up above freezing. We do expect that to happen tomorrow afternoon. And by Monday, as those of you here in the Washington, Baltimore area go back into work, we expect highs up around 50. So there will be absolutely, well, very few problems, I should say, for the Monday morning rush hour. And that's another point I wanted to make, Declan, because it did hit on a Saturday. It caused few problems in and around Washington today.
Okay, again, thanks a lot, Mike. That's Mike Seidel reporting from the nation's capital amidst the several inches of snow. And as Mike mentioned, very fortunate in that we have some fairly warm air with this snowfall. Joining me now is senior meteorologist Colin Marquis. And Colin, very fortunate in that at least we got the snow for the folks who love the snow, but at least thankfully for folks who had to do some traveling today, not a big problem.
It's almost the perfect situation, you're right, in that some of the snow did accumulate on the grassy surfaces, on the bushes, on some of the car tops, but on the roads where it really counts for traveling and getting around, it was mostly wet.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and take a look at a Doppler radar for you. Again, we'll go back to the Doppler, this one out of Virginia, Sterling, Virginia, west of D.C. And Colin, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit of what's been happening as far as trends?
Yeah, a couple of things. This goes back about 40 minutes. Most recent image was about 10 minutes ago. And notice that along the western edge, northwestern and western parts of Virginia, we're tending to see the precipitation break apart. And so therefore, as far as the Washington, D.C. metro area, it looks like about another hour or two of accumulating snow on the grassy surfaces, and then it will tend to diminish in intensity. And then as far as Baltimore is concerned, at last check, they were reporting heavy snow. That was at the top of the hour. Looks like latest Doppler is showing that the heaviest weather, the darker green images shifting south of Baltimore now.
Okay, again, Colin Marquis talking about some of the trends here, and it does look like, in addition, farther east towards the mid-Atlantic coast, the snow will linger well into the evening. Well, stay tuned here to the Weather Channel. We'll keep you posted on the snow as it continues to make its way through the mid-Atlantic. Right now, we're going to turn it back to the studio in Rich Johnson.
Across the country, we see something of a storm center developing. This is a weaker storm, but there's a couple different features coming out, and we're going to see our southern jet stream rather active. So that means the storm that we saw today make its way up past Kentucky, West Virginia, through the mid-Atlantic. We're going to see those type of storms again, one after another. Maybe not quite as far to the north, but the setup is there to keep the southern United States a little wet for a while. Jet stream heading right into Texas. That is adding to a little bit of moisture, mostly high clouds, what we're seeing here. Definitely bark worse than its bite, if I can use a cliche there, around San Antonio. Little light rain. That's all. Most areas it's dry. If you're heading out tonight, anywhere in the southern United States, lots of clouds, but few driving problems. Snow flurries near St. Louis, snow flurries near Cleveland earlier today, some accumulated snow near Chicago. Lake effect today. How about that? Huh? Yeah. Lake effect, that northeasterly wind, you don't see that too often. Happened, trying to think how long ago it was. It was several weeks, or maybe it was a month and a half. Brain's a little bit tired these days, and there's something back then. Well, we saw some significant lake effect. Today, about an inch. Anyhow, you are showing some light snow still in northern Illinois, some light rain showers near San Antonio, maybe one or two pockets of slightly heavier rain. Could be a moderate burst. Also, a few showers in